So just a moment.
The clock here thinks it's 20 to 11.
And Chair Russell, you are live.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a special meeting of the Northwest Community Council. It is November 17th at 3:01 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And as is standard with these virtual meetings, I'd like to go through the roll and just make sure that everybody's audio and video are working correctly. So let's start with District 1, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, colleagues and staff. All set for our meeting.
Good stuff. Thank you. And District 13, Councillor Lovelace.
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all. Happy to be here virtually and hope we can meet in person soon.
Absolutely. We are working on that. District 14, Councillor Blackburn.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully my Wi-Fi has recovered from our power outage earlier out here in Beaver Bank.
So far, so good. And,
perfect.
Deputy Mayor Outfit. Good afternoon.
I am here. Hi, everybody.
Good stuff. Thank you, everybody. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Can I please have a motion for the approval of the order of business?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Lovelace.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Blackburn. Thank you very much. To the clerk or members of the committee, are there any changes?
Chair Russell, there are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I don't see any from members of the committee either. So all in favor of the order of business as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much. We have an order of business with the one item on it being item 3.1.1, case 20401, updating the planning documents for Bedford West, sub-area 10, Kearney Lake Road, Bedford, and Halifax. And we have a presentation this evening, or this afternoon, and then we will be open for questions and the motion. Oh, over to you, Jacqueline.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of Northwest Community Council. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we can.
Oh, perfect. My name is Jacqueline Belil. I'm joined this afternoon by Miles Agar. We are both planners at the Regional Planning Division of Planning and Development. And if we could just go to the next slide, please. So case 20401 is before Community Council this afternoon for recommendation to Regional Council regarding proposed amendments to the Bedford West Secondary Planning Strategy as embedded within the Halifax Municipal Planning Strategy and the Bedford Municipal Planning Strategy, and as implemented within the Halifax Mainland Land Use Bylaw. So these amendments will enable the serviced development of approximately 31 hectares of Bedford West Sub-Area 10. So essentially, when the Bedford West Secondary Planning Strategy was approved in 2006, detailed planning was not yet completed for Sub-Area 10 because municipal pipe services were not yet available to this portion of Bedford West. In 2014, services were installed in the area, which prompted many of the property owners to request detailed planning be completed. So the request was initiated by Regional Council in 2015. If we go to slide 2, please. So this slide shows the general location of Bedford West on the right side of the slide, or rather on the left side of the slide, and it's generally bounded by the Hammonds Plains Road, Highway 102, Kearney Lake, and the Kingswood subdivision. And the map on the right shows the 12 sub-areas of Bedford West with sub-area 10 outlined in red. We have slide 3, please. So this slide shows an aerial photograph to the right with the sub-area outlined in red again. And you can see there are two distinct parts of the sub-area, a 2-hectare or 5-acre area to the northwest that has existing development and for which services have not yet been extended, and a 31-hectare or 77-acre area of land for which services are now available. And this section of the sub-area is primarily undeveloped, but has had some past industrial uses such as a cement plant and a quarry operation kind of in that center area. And what I'd like to draw your attention to on this slide specifically, it's the map on the left, is the boundary line between the Bedford plan area and the Halifax plan area towards the top portion of the plan area where services haven't been extended. Slide 4, please. So we'll go over all the information I'm about to present in greater detail in subsequent presentations. But for now, I'll just mention before I do that for this application, staff have carried out the required community engagement and are recommending amendments that respond to the unique challenges posed by the geography of the sub-area, including steep slopes, the former industrial land uses that I mentioned, and constraints at the Highway 102 Kearney Lake Road interchange. And the amendments put forward seek to ensure active transportation infrastructure and parkland is provided, and they seek to mitigate any development-related impact on the adjacent Kearney Lake. So I'm just going to talk at a very high level about what changes are being proposed to the planning documents. Firstly, we're introducing a new schedule BW7A, that will administratively divide the area into what we're calling neighborhood districts. And this schedule also shows the general location of a future multi-use pathway, which is active transportation infrastructure. Slide 5, please. So on that topic of the pathway, we're revising an existing map in the Bedford West Secondary Planning Strategy. That is the transportation system map, which is scheduled BW5, to also include that pathway. But we're using the existing language of the map where it's labeled as a community trail. So the idea is that this pathway will connect Hogan Court Park in sub-area 9 to the 102 Kearney Lake Road interchange along the Kearney Lake Road to allow for a future connection to the Halifax Mainland Trail. Slide 6, please. So in terms of the policies that will be inserted into the SPS, those amendments include maintaining the existing zoning for sub-area 10A. So this is the area that has properties within the Bedford plan area. Rezoning sub-areas 10B, 10C, and 10D to the Bedford West Comprehensive Development District Zone, which will require development to occur through the development agreement process. Encouraging one development agreement per neighborhood district, and limiting the number of units that can be constructed prior to improvements occurring at the Highway 102 Kearney Lake Road interchange. And that limit is subject to the approval of the Nova Scotia Department of Transportation and Public Works Department. Slide 7, please. The proposed policy will require future development agreements to consider the need for transit facilities in the area. And that item comes from the uncertainty at this point around the exact location that the purple line that's planned under the bus rapid transit strategy will be routed via Highway 102 or via the Kearney Lake Road. So as development applications come forward, staff will look to determine if any transit-related infrastructure is needed in the area. The proposed policy also requires parkland dedication, either in the form of land or in cash in lieu or some combination thereof as determined through future development agreement process. The policy also requires that subdivision occur. And that subdivision process kind of acts as a trigger to ensure that capital cost contributions for our HRM transportation infrastructure are collected, as well as to ensuring that the parkland dedication occurs, as the trigger for that is through subdivision approval. The policy also requires 75% of residential units to be in the form of a multiple unit dwelling. Slide 8, please. And the proposed policy sets density limits. It permits a maximum density of 28.4 people per acre for sub-areas 10B and 10D, and 53.3 people per acre for sub-area 10C. And these densities for this acreage is expected to yield a total population of about 2,100 people. The proposed policy requires environmental assessments for sites where former industrial uses occurred. And it also requires that development be clustered. And this is an important criteria because it's the clustering and the multiple unit dwelling form that will allow for more preservation of the site in its natural form, to preserve the existing draining patterns and preserve tree cover, and to reduce environmental impacts of development on the adjacent Kearney Lake. Slide 9, please. So the policy directs limited access points be provided to the Kearney Lake Road, which the clustering also helps achieve, and contains controls for building form in terms of the height and floor plate size. So buildings are permitted to vary in height to 4 stories closer to the Kearney Lake Road, and then the further back on the property buildings are sited, they can go up to 12 stories in height. For any building greater than 20 meters, a wind analysis will be provided, and that will ensure that there are no adverse effects kind of in the pedestrian realm or on any competitive rowing activities that currently take place on Kearney Lake. The policy will also permit local commercial uses as per the existing policies of the secondary planning strategy. Slide 10, please. So the policy will also ensure development around cliff faces is carefully considered and evaluated to ensure public safety. This primarily relates to the area of the site where the former quarry was located. The policy also permits utility uses as of right. The southernmost property of sub-area 10 is owned by Nova Scotia Power. So for that utility to develop utility uses on their land, a development agreement won't be required. It will just be as of right. And there's also a policy that recognizes the historic tree removal on previously developed sites. So currently the Bedford West secondary planning strategy policies do not allow HRM to consider development agreements on properties that have been cleared in advance of development. But for sites like the former quarry site, this was not considered reasonable because tree clearing that would have happened there happened decades ago. So it was not in any sort of attempt to circumvent HRM environmental policies. And then also lastly, the amendment package contains a bit of a housekeeping amendment to account for some density that was unrealized in sub-area 6 due to the construction of the new school sites, which was an institutional land use, and those lands had previously been considered to be commercial use. So that's just to make most effective use of infrastructure and that unused capacity that can now be realized in sub-area 10C, which was considered to be a very suitable site for that based on what the site could accommodate and what the capacity there was able to provide. Slide 11, please. So I have two slides here that are going to show the milestones of the planning process. And in some ways, you can consider this case 20401, as really part one of a larger process, where this is the policy that's being developed, and part two will come later as property owners develop detailed site plans based on that property. So should Community Council decide to recommend forward to Regional Council, there will be a public hearing. The results of that, if approved, will be subject to provincial review, and then case number 20401 ends. But then if we can go to slide 12, you'll see that developers will then go away and develop very detailed plans based on this policy, and then come into our urban enabled group to seek development agreements that will be subject to the typical planning application review process, and will go to Halifax and West Community Council because that's the area of land where most of these policies apply. Slide 13, please. So with that, it is staff's recommendation that Northwest Community Council recommend that Regional Council give first reading and to adopt the MPS amendments. But really at this Community Council body where we are right now, your recommendation is primarily focused on the northernmost part of the sub-area, portion within the Bedford Plan area, where staff are recommending that the existing zoning be maintained. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This concludes staff's presentation.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. I haven't seen that in my email yet, so hopefully we will get a copy of that at some point soon. At this point, I'm opening the floor to anyone who would, or I'm going to open the floor to anyone who has questions about the presentation or about the project. If you do have questions, please signify that in the chat, but let's start with Councillor Oathip. And would you mind putting the motion on the floor, please?
Thank you, Chair, and I will be happy to put it on the floor. I move that Northwest Community Council recommend that Regional Council, one, give first reading to consider the proposed amendments to the municipal planning strategy for Bedford as set out in attachment C of the October 25th, 2021 staff report to enable development of Bedford West sub-area 10, Kearney Lake Road, and schedule a public hearing. And then two, adopt the proposed amendments of the municipal planning strategy for Bedford as set out in the attachment C of the October 25th staff report. So moved.
Thank you. Do we have seconded by Councillor Lovelace? Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Oathip.
Yeah, just a few things here. Obviously, this is going to be coming to council next week. If that goes forward at first reading, we'll be setting a public hearing. The second comment was, I believe this was passed last night, recommended going forward to community council by the other community council, for the regional council by the other community council. And the Councillor Morrison and I have indicated to staff and to the developer that we have some questions and some concerns and some suggestions that we'll be meeting with them about over the next little while. And the developers indicated that they are very happy to meet with us, and that's wonderful. Last but not least, Jacqueline, though it says Kate, you look like Jacqueline. It does. I do have one question. Your presentation all made sense to me about what was covered in policy, the next steps, DA, whatnot. The one thing that caught me a little off guard was the comments regarding the province. Now, my understanding was the province had said that there could only be a certain number of units, I think it was like 400 or something, until such time as improvements were made to the interchange, their interchange, if you will, at Kearney Lake and the 102. But you said something about being subject to their approval. Just help me what that means. I thought this was originally actually had come from them.
Sir, oh,
Yeah.
off mute.
Yeah.
Certainly,
Go ahead,
Councillor.
Jacqueline.
Through the chair to the councillor. So yes, the province has indicated that 400 units are what that interchange can currently handle. But in the future, if there are any interim improvements or anything done in the area where they relook at their infrastructure and they could say, well, with these interim solutions, maybe we can permit another amount of units, say 500, 600, until the full solution is found. So what's currently in the package is 400 units, but then there's another clause that says, subject to the province. So if there is a solution that can come forward to allow a few more units before total upgrades, that's all subject to when a completed development application comes in. That's kind of one of the review agencies that the current enabled group will look to for the advice on.
All right, that makes more sense. And just quickly, have they indicated a potential timeline at all for the redesign of the interchange? Have you heard anything from TIR? No. Okay. All right, listen, that's great. And thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jacqueline, for the presentation. I'm happy to support this to go to the next level.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions about the report? I don't see any. So all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you. That passes, surprisingly. The date of the next Northwest Community Council meeting is December 13th, 2021.
He couldn't hold out. He couldn't hold out for another 30 seconds. Sorry.
That's all good.
He'll get my guys going now.
Yes,
my guys
exactly.
will start now.
Yep. So could I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. We stand adjourned. Everybody have a good afternoon.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.